For the next presentation, please give a good round of applause for our friend Simon Grondin. He's one of our latest recruits from the Quebec chapter. And like he said earlier, this is his first big SIR meeting. But if I'm not mistaken, you teach at Université Laval in Quebec City. And he has written a book called Le Hockey But du Divan, Seen from the Couch. That's
Couch's College.
Couch's College. So I give you Simon Grondin, and he has a presentation about the relative age effect in ice hockey.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, well, first, thank you very much for organizing this meeting. It's very enjoyable. Oh, I can speak louder if it's the point. Okay, sorry. I'll speak louder. I will even speak English. I told you, I grew up in Sherbrooke. In Sherbrooke, I don't speak English, except when I play touch football or something like that. I used to speak English with the opponents, but otherwise, okay, let's make it. That will be quite a strange talk, I would say, given what you have heard so far. I will take you somewhere else. That will be about ice hockey, but about something quite special. What is called in psychology the relative age effect. It's fun to present it here in Sherbrooke because I will be presenting some data that I collected in a master thesis some 30-some years ago when I was studying in kinesiology at University of Sherbrooke. That's quite special to have this first meeting here. This should work. No. We need some timing here. Okay. Okay, please go. Okay, you go again. Is there a way to move the computer here? I can try the easiest way. Okay, sorry. Okay. Here is who knows about the relative age effect? Who have heard about that? No more than that. Okay. Wow. You'll be surprised by the content, the main content. Okay. You probably already know that if you want to be part of a category, age category, you have to be born before January 1st or after January 1st. Everyone knows about that? Who knows about that? Age category based on chronological age. There is a consequence to it. The consequence to it is that when you are making a team, those that are born that year all have the same age. If you're born in January, you have the same age as the one that is born 11 months later in December. Well, it doesn't make much difference that you and I have 11 months different, or that you have 11 months different. But when you're 10 years old, it's huge. There must be some consequence on the development of person when you are categorized in one category or the other. That is what we will be looking at. So during this talk, I will show you what is the impact of this categorization system. And then we will try to understand what is at play. What is the mechanics of the relative age effect? And then we'll try to see if there's any solution. And if you have other solutions, they are welcome. Because I grew up in Sherbrooke, I also prepared some trivia about the Sherbrooke area. But if we have time only. I didn't know how much time I would have. If you want to know if there's any relative age effect, you have to understand one thing at the beginning. You have to understand how are the births distributed over the year. So if you look in Canada, during those years, because I will show you data that are quite old. So if you look, when were born Canadians? Canadians were born in the first 3 months, in the second 3 months, and so on. And what you can see is that roughly you have 50% of people born in the first half of the year and 50% born in the second half. If you look at people in Ontario, that's roughly the same picture. And in Quebec, you do have something like 51-49 if you divide into 2.5 years. Okay, so you keep it in mind that it is kind of distributed normally over the year. So we should have the same distribution amongst hockey players. When you look at the data of when were born NHL players 30-some years ago, the data you have are these. You have almost 58% of players born in the first 6 months, and you have something like 42 point something born in the last 6 months. That's a significant effect. That's a real effect. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be 50-50 if the players are coming from Canada, as it was the case 30-some years ago. It's not the case. It's not like this. So we have to try to understand. We have to understand that the problem comes from the development of players. If you look for the same year at the distribution in the Quebec Junior Hockey League, you can see terrible data. You can see that you have something like 2/3 of the players born in the first 6 months, and you don't have even 33% of the players born in the last 6 months. That's a huge difference. And if you look at the data now, these are the data we have just seen. And these are the data in the Quebec Junior Hockey League about 4 years ago. And you see that, oh, it's not exactly the same distribution. What happened? A different distribution of birth in Quebec? No. It just happened that during between year 2002 and year 2008, in the minor hockey in Quebec, they moved the cutoff date from January 1st to October 1st to make it compatible with school entry in Quebec province. So because they move it from here to there, then you can see that the worst trimester is this one. But keep in mind that it's still January 1st, the cutoff dates for Junior Hockey League. So you can see that it moves like that. At the same moment, if you look at what's going on in other leagues, in Ontario Hockey League, you got the problem. Almost 72% of players were born in the first 6 months. Can you believe it? Yeah. And it's still the same. It's still the same 30 years later, and you have the same problem with the Western Hockey League. Think about that now. Think about the meaning of it. You have 70% that are born in the first 6 months, and 30% that are born, and it's supposed to be 50-50. Meaning of it is that you virtually scrap 20% of hockey players. So if you are the president of a federation
and you are wondering, how can we improve the product? How can we produce more hockey players? How come that we do not have enough Quebec players in the NHL? You scrap 20% of the guys right away at the beginning, right at the beginning of their development. Because it comes at some moment here. It comes when they are junior, but it's a consequence of what? It's a consequence of this. Okay, what's happening? What is the mechanics of the relative age effect? Okay, first what has to be understood is that you need some competition for getting into the lineup. What is to say is that if you are a 12-year-old kid and you are in a village where there are only 12 players that are the age for playing Pee-wee, there will be no relative age effect. Everyone will be in the roster, there's no problem. But suppose now that you grew up in a larger city, in Drummondville or in Sarnia or a larger city, then you will have double letters, minor hockey, and you will have competition for the position. Who's gonna get the position, do you think? Okay, so it's a matter of popularity of sport, because suppose that you are in a large city, but hockey is not popular at all. Kids won't want to play. There'll be no relative age effect. There is probably no relative age effect in Canada for Pee-wee playing boulin-grain or something like that. No, so the point is a matter of popularity and sample. When we go back to the data of my master thesis, you look at this. Where you have double letters means that you have a larger city. And look at what are the data for Pee-wee. For Pee-wee, you almost have 75% of players that are born in the first 6 months. And you have 26 or something like that players that are born in the last 6 months. And so on. You have even double B, you will have this kind of distribution. The effect is not that bad. If it's recreative hockey, well, you see that it is distributed normally. So you have hockey players from all trimester, but if you have competition, the older guy, those that are born in January of the same year as those that are born in December, will have the position. So if we want to understand the mechanics of the relative age effect, we have to consider this competition aspect, and then you have to consider the meaning of development, the meaning of the physical factors that are at play. Who has children here? Those having children knows that it makes a difference being at the beginning of the school year in September and at the end of the school year in June. You know that your kids are not as tall as the kids of the year after, and they are taller than they were the year before. We're talking about guys that could have almost 1 year difference and that are considered having the same age. 1 year when you're 10 years old means heavier, being taller. It's also mean having much more speed, much more power for skating, much more force for even hockey, for shooting. So just the average development of people, you see that you have guys that are not competing on the same basis. And now suppose that they do not have the same rhythm, the same level of maturation. Because a kid could be a fast maturer, a kid could be a slow maturer. Then it's almost impossible if you're a slow maturer born at the end of the year to face someone that is older and is a fast maturer. The difference will be too big. Okay, it may happen that you do not understand exactly what I mean. I'll show you. What's that? Why am I taking this junior guy and this kid? Well, this was shown in Le Soleil in the 80s, and I was then teaching growth and development here in Sherbrooke and in another university. And they were just reporting that, and they were talking about a study that was conducted at Laval University at the end of the 60s. And in this study, they just took the biological age of kids. The biological age, there are several ways of assessing that, and they did that for the Pee Wee tournament. And they determined that some kids were biologically 7-year-old and others were 14-year-olds. So you may have a huge difference within a given category. So we are talking about this type of problem. So in the mechanics of the relative age effect, there's a need for competition, you have physical factors, you also have psychological factors. It makes it, even psychologically, you understand that physically it makes a huge difference between being 10 years old instead of 9. Now, even psychologically, you have different level of maturity. There are some critical age where 1 year could make a huge difference in your understanding, in your capability of having abstraction. You can understand the rules better. You can understand things better. You can understand the strategy better if you're older. You can, from an affective viewpoint, you can understand more naturally, I would say, the demand from the coach. You can understand what's going on between the teammates. You can understand better what's going on with the parents and the relation with the coach and what's going on. If you're older, you have better chances to understand even these aspects of the game. Psychologically, there is something extremely important. If you are better in an activity, you are much more inclined to practice it. Who here likes to do something where you're not good at? Usually, when you're good at something, you receive some gratification. You like to feel good. We are all the same. Okay, so what happens when you have someone that is older? He has better chance to be stronger, be more cognitively developed, and also he will feel competent, much more competent. Then he will be much more inclined to contribute, to participate in the game. So he will receive reinforcement from, maybe from the coach, from the parents if they are not jealous, from the teammates if he helps the team to win, which will happen. There will be reinforcement maybe in the relative. You know, hey, the cousin is good for that. In the neighborhood, it will be the talker. Hey, he's good for playing ice hockey, and so on. So it is part of the mechanics where if it just happens that you are better when you're young, better for whatever reason, but it could be for a matter of relative age effect, then you will practice more. So we have a series of factors, this one, this one, this one, and even just this one. What does that mean, being born in January instead of December of a given year? It means this. It means that you've been playing one more season. You have one more season of practice. That makes a huge difference. You have been practicing more. It also means if you are better in the team because you're older, you'll have more ice time. And just as if it's not enough, you will also probably, if you're in better team, you will have better coaches. If you have a better environment to develop, you'll become better. I put this cute picture. You may recognize this teenager. It was taken during the Memorial Cup of 2005. And I put it there because it shows the joy of teammates, the Oceanic, Rimouski Oceanic. And they were facing London that year. London had 3 20-year-old players that were 21 at the moment of the tournament. It was not the case of the Oceanic. And the Oceanic even got a 20-year-old player that was the backup goalie, so he was not playing. And if you look, if you exclude this goalie and you look at the average age of the London Knights and this team, they were 6 months younger. We can understand why they lost. But that doesn't mean they had less talent. I think this guy is good. Okay. The question now is there any solution? Is there any solution? I think there are solutions. So I will just put a series of potential solutions, acknowledging that some solutions might not be good or you may not use it in real life. But we will think together about that. Okay, one solution is to use biological age instead of chronological age. That would be nice, but it may not make sense. This might mean that we can use weight, just like they do for boxing. You have box categories like that. I don't think we want to go there. You can use height or a ratio or something like that. Might not be a good idea. There are other ways of looking at biological age. You can look at dental age, but dental age you will see the changes between 0 and 2 and between 6 and 13. So you won't have a continuous change. But you would have a continuous change with bone age. So you can have an X-ray from each players and you have norms and you can say, oh, this guy is young, this guy is older, and technically it's possible. Theoretically it's possible. Practically, is it possible? That'd be a bit complicated. But at least we have something like potential solution. Is there any way to deal with the problem with the system of chronological age? According to me, the response is certainement, sure. What could be done? What is the problem? The problem is that the age categories are 24 months. 24 months happen that it is a multiple of 12, and there are 12 months in a year. Of course. But suppose now that we have age categories lasting 21 months. What would be the, it's quite abstract what I will say, but I think you will catch the point. What does that mean? If you have a 24 months categories, what you will have is 2 years during in a cycle of 8 years, you will play 2 years in each category, at home, Pee-wee, Bantam, Midget. If you do have age categories of 21 months, what you will have is 7 years. And during those 7 years, you will be 2 years in one category, 2 years in another one, 2 years in 1 year, or 1, 2, 2, 2, or 2, 1, 2, 2. But each player will have the chance at some moment in the development to be the older one or the younger one. That there will be a rotation of the chance of getting the advantage. I proposed that 30-some years ago, and we still have the problems. We have seen the data. For heaven's sakes, what should be done? At least, we can look at the problem from an ice hockey standpoint, but if we look at development in general, one solution is to say, at least, we will have January 1st for this discipline, but we will have other cutoff date. So everyone will have a chance to be the older one. So the good news is if you play baseball during summertime, if you play in the Little League, the cutoff date will be August 1st instead. But you see the point. The idea is to do not always have the same guys having the chance to be the older one. Even more simple, just make it mandatory. In your team, you have to have at least 3 guys in the last semester and at least 3 guys in the trimester before. Make it mandatory. That's simple. It would work from a developmental viewpoint. What would be the consequence? The consequence is that the coach would not have the best team he could have right away. He would contribute to the development of the guys, but would not have the best team. Maybe that's the problem in developmental ice hockey, is that we want to win now. Might not be necessary, but we all want to win now. So, one possible solution, another possible solution, we may establish some technical standards. And if you meet the standards, if you are more skilled and you can go like this and go back within 12 seconds, then you're skilled enough to play in this category, and so on. This would be another way of approaching it. Otherwise, the least we should do, I think, is to let people know. Now, when you will go back in your federation, let them know that the problem exists. There is some discrimination in the chronological age system. And what the coach has to understand, must understand, is that what would lead you to more success now does not mean more talent. The best player you select are not necessarily the more talented, or even more dramatically, those having the best potential for becoming very good. I hope that you get the point, because that's very important. And another possibility, I imagined this one when I wrote the book that we talked about a few minutes ago. But in that book, I have a very far-fetched ideas in the first chapter saying that, well, why don't they give the Stanley Cup twice a year? Why is that only once a year? What's that idea? There's no natural cut there. They can take a team in Manitoba, it's -40, it's a natural home for hockey, and transplant it in Arizona. So there's no need to bother with the fact that we have only one cup a year. And we used to have many Stanley Cup winners for several years before it belongs to the NHL only. But whatever is the point about the Stanley Cup, the point here is, wow, why don't we have a hockey season from September till the end of December with a cutoff, say, January 1st, and then another season from January up to April with another cutoff date, say, July 1st. Why not? Maybe because it would be a mess, but there would be some advantage, because sometimes when you're in the team and you play on the bench, or there is a conflict between players or the coach or something like that, well, if you can cut the season in two, that would be a huge benefit. Just in case you haven't got my point yet. Just in case. Ces deux gars-là, these two guys, are the same age. 1 month different. 1 month. They don't play hockey. They play soccer together. Football. They're on the same team. They were on the same team when the pictures was taken. Same class. 1 month different. It just happened. You see the difference. That's huge. But listen to that. It just happened that it is this guy that is 1 month older. Next year, this guy will be in the upper category because he was born in December. And this guy will be in the same category because he was born in January. And this guy, the year after, was here. Say something. Soyez révoltés. Okay, so that was one chapter of a 12-chapter book that I wrote 2 years ago about different aspects of ice hockey. Well, we have time? Do we?
We want to wind it up short.
The real talk is over, but
Very short.
Very short. Okay, it just happened that this picture was taken something like 47 or 48 years ago. And I think that this guy that is 4 years older than this guy tried to convince him to be a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. But of course, in the 60s, he was a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. This guy is me indeed. And I never became a Chicago Blackhawks fan. It just happened that, well, of course, why were they? I just realized, I received the photo last year, having seen the guy for 40 years or something like that. And then we were connected. He heard me on the radio when I had an interview for the book, and then he said, "Hey, Simon, how come?" And then we kept in touch, and he sent me this picture. And it's very fascinating to see. He has been a Blackhawks fan since, and it never happened to me. Otherwise, I have a few questions within 5 minutes.
Okay.
You can.
Oh, okay. Okay. Largest margin for a shutout in the NHL history. All the response are from Sherbrooke or the area. What's the name of the goalie who got the shutout?
Are you lovely?
Eh?
Are you lovely?
No.
Connie Dion?
Connie Dion. Maybe you recognize him.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Born in asbestos.
Asbestos, yes, nearby. Indeed, he was born more technically. He was born in Saint-Rémy de Tinquit. He's from the area. And the fun thing in the story is that he's the father of the guy who was my English teacher in secondaire 5, high school 5, last year of high school. So you see the damage he has done with my accent. Okay, another one. Who is the player from Asbestos, actually, who spent his entire career with the Bruins and won the Stanley Cup in 70?
Don't knock up.
You're good. I got this cue. And the response is actually Don Marcotte. Don Marcotte is the brother of Jean-Claude Marcotte. Jean-Claude taught English to me in secondaire 4 the year before. And those were my first connection with, you know, the guy on Saturday night on CBC? So, because he's the brother of my professor of English, I've heard a little bit about the Don Cherry story of that year. And I've never been a fan of the big bad Bruins. Oh no, certainly not. And otherwise, oh, that's a 1971. And who was the AHL MVP and top scorer in 1980? And the response is Normand Dubé. You may not know Normand Dubé. Why am I presenting Normand Dubé? Because Normand Dubé was from La Dubienville. I told you I'm from Sherbrooke. When my parents moved from Lac-Mégantic to Sherbrooke, we went on La Dubienville in 1962. And it just happened. There was not much players playing in the NHL in that war. Elite hockey. There was one on the street. The year after, we moved two street down, and then we moved 3 street back, always in the same parish, Pavos Saint Joseph. And when we went 3 street back, it was on Rue d'Orval, 2 doors from Réal Veilleux. Who's Réal Veilleux? Réal Veilleux is the guy who was the GM and the owner just before Georges Guilbeault. Georges would have told you who is Réal Veilleux. So, a guy from Sherbrooke, the MVP in the AHL, and there was another one in the same decade, and it was Stéphane Lebeau. So, don't trust too much your memory, and don't trust too much what you see. I will end with that just to tell you that in real life, I'm a professor of psychology, experimental psychology. You see those 2 tables. You have the long one, and you have the large one. You can see that. Everyone understand my question? You have a long one and a large one. Now what I have to tell you is that these tables have the same surface. No. Yes. Don't trust your memory, don't trust your perceptive system, and that will be all for today.
Thank you.
if I can trust my memory. Have you done any research into the biological factor, why there's certain players are born in certain months? I mean, in some parts in northern Quebec and Manitoba, it's so cold, there's nothing else to do but raise hockey players. So, did you figure in the 9-month sector?
Haven't done the, if the point is, if there is any change in the strength of the relative age effect depending on the latitude, I haven't checked. All I can say is that the more there will be people playing ice hockey, the more there will be competition for position, the more it is likely that the effect will be strong.
I think that's a fascinating paper. It's really well presented. But do you know the year in which there was a common agreement on the 1st of January? Because in minor hockey in Ontario, it used to be the 1st of August. And a little story, in 1961, the Parry Sound Phantoms came to Gananoque near Kingston to play against the Gananoque Phantoms, who had 2 players born in the first week in August. And Eaton and Higgins and the scouts were there to see these 2 players. And they were 6 inches taller, better skaters, faster, and but a 12-year-old, a crew called Bobby Orr, almost stole the game. I had the pleasure of covering it, and he almost stole the game single-handedly, and he was playing 1 year. I have the idea that regardless of what system you put up, someone's going to be left behind. Yes. That happens all through your school year.
Yes.
So I think that's a great paper, and I hope someday that there might be some adjustments.
Okay, well, thanks, sir. Okay, there will always be players that will need no advantage, disadvantage, and they are so gracious. Bobby Orr was, Gretzky was born in January, but I guess that even in December he would have made it, and there is no doubt about that. The point, if there's any point, is that I think that we are losing some players, and we should not do that. And it's not just a matter of being a farm team, that Canada should be a farm team for the NHL. It's just a matter of equality, given the importance that is given to this activity, a matter of equality amongst the young guys. Because no kid can understand that, oh, it's because I'm younger, maybe. You do not think you are not part of the team, you're scratch, and you're not with the friends that happen to be older. Sir?
Just an example. When I played junior hockey, I was born November 14th. And the deadline, I think, was the 1st of September. I just made it. If I wouldn't have made it, maybe I wouldn't have played hockey at all. I had that extra year. Billy Bo, 3 days before, he could have played another year if he would have been born a week later. So I think the cutoff date, I always thought, would have been best the 1st of June. The guy has 3 months to recuperate, 3 months to grow up more, because they're not playing hockey.
No, I think
the other guy has 2 days.
It may happen that I do not catch the point, but I think that it would not change. It's not a matter of recovering or not. But maybe there's something I do not catch right away about something. I think that wherever you put the cutoff date, you will have losers and winners in the...
Yeah, but if you got the cutoff date the 1st of June, you got 3 months. Comparative cutoff date the 1st of January, you might have 2 days. The difference is 2 days and 3 months to recuperate. Otherwise,
but if you put the cutoff date June 1st, you will have guys born June 2nd, they will be old, and some will be born in May 30th, and they will be young. Well, what I can tell you, is that in Australia, for soccer, at some point they moved the cutoff date, and they simply moved the problem. And we have seen that from 2002 to 2008. in the Quebec province. We moved the problem. We got it so.
If you have cutoff date in the middle of the winter.
What I can tell you also is that you have other cutoff dates for other sports activities. For instance, in Japan, you have a lot of activities that end April 1st, and you have the same problem. The older ones are in May, and the younger ones are in April and May, and the younger ones are in March.
We always have that problem. One way or the other. I think the other one, it must have been studied from A to Z.
But thanks for your
May I add a footnote?
Last question.
Nothing to do with age, but on the night that Bobby Orr was discovered in Gananoque, and they came to see these two players who were born in the first week in August, they forgot about the two kids, the 13-year-olds, and took the 12-year-old. And all those teams, in those days, the Bantams, they were very convivial, and after the game, they got together, ironically, in the Boston Cafe, and the Gananoque kids were there. And when Orr came in the front door, the Gananoque players all stood up and applauded him. He was a hero at age 12. I just thought I'd throw that in because I took a 60-second Polaroid picture of that with the kids all sitting together with their arms around Bobby Orr. And I just recently was presented with a copy signed by Bobby Orr. Sorry for the person.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much.